All right, good morning. I hope everybody had an enjoyable break. I'm a little bitter because OU and OSU are still out for this week, and we have to come back. So we could shorten the holiday break at UCO. By 1 week we used to get 4, we only get 3. So I am not exactly thrilled to be here today. I really needed another week to prepare. But having said that, there's nothing I can do about it, so we'll jump right in. I'm going to pass out the first assignment. What I want you to do is I want you to think about what makes you unique as an individual. The most important word in marketing today may be differentiation. Everything is differentiated at this point. What is going to make you unique and a valuable asset to a company when you leave this institution and go out into the world of work? So I want you to think about your 3 greatest strengths that are going to be of value to an employer. There is one caveat to this. You may not list as one of your strengths, I am a hard worker. There are 2 reasons for this. One is it's probably not true. The overwhelming amount of sociological and psychological evidence suggests in the literature that your generation is among the laziest on the planet, that you don't want to work, so it's probably not true. And even if it is true, it's probably irrelevant in the world of work today. It's estimated by economists at the Bureau of Labor Statistics that 50% of the jobs in existence today will not be there in 10 years. How many of you go to Sam's? How many of you have seen the people handing out samples at Sam's? They're being replaced by this device. It's called a Freos. It's wonderful. You don't have to pay it wages. It doesn't require health insurance. It doesn't call in sick. And best of all, it doesn't allow you to get more than 1 sample because you have to scan your card. They're replacing all of those people that used to hand out samples at Sam's with devices like this. So even if you used to work hard, it may not be enough in today's world. How many of you have seen this? This is the future of security and policing. It's called Night Scope. It's replacing the mall security guard. So even if you are a hard worker, which studies show that you're probably not, it probably won't matter. So I want you to dig deeper into your little psyche, into what really makes you a unique person. What's going to make you valuable and be able to market yourself to the business community. So I'm going to hand out the first part of today's Critical Thinking Challenge. I want you to read the instructions. It's important that you read the instructions, particularly the part that says, give me 3 well-developed sentences. I'll give you 10 minutes to do that, or actually I'm going to give you 5 minutes to do that. After that, I will give you the second part, which is going to ask you to break into groups of about 7 or 8 people. There are approximately 65 of you in here, and I'd like to have about 10 groups. And you're going to work with your groups to develop, based on your strengths in the group, a brand identity for your group, and then you're going to market yourself to the class. By the way, the class is recorded. You will be on video. If this is a problem for you because you're in the witness protection program, there's facial recognition software out there, and the mob will come and kneecap you. Because of that, you probably need to see me after I turn off the recorder, and we'll try and find you another class because this class is recorded and broadcast on the World Wide Web. So that's my disclaimer. That was in the syllabus that was on D2L that I hope you all have already read. Okay? So I'm going to hand this out. I'm going to stop the recording, and then we'll work in your groups to develop a team name. Thanks. All right, so I've turned the recorder back on for 1 minute. I want you to have your sacrificial group leader stand up. Every group has one group leader that they decided to throw to the gods, or the Kraken, or whatever you want to call it today. Have them stand up. Stay standing. Every group needs to have a group leader. All right. So what we're going to do is in your groups, you're going to introduce yourself, talk about your strengths. You're going to develop a team identity, a team brand name. You're going to use this in a minute. You're going to pitch your team. You're all going to come up, introduce yourself. You're going to have your team leader pitch your team to the class. We're going to play Marketing Survivor. And we'll, by either a round of applause or boos, decide whether or not your team is voted off the island for today in Tribal Council. So we'll play Marketing Survivor. Then you're going to answer this plangent question in one well-written, complete sentence. Discuss why marketing is important to society, and we'll determine whether or not you have come up with a cogent response to that question after you've sold your team. All right, so the team leaders, I'm going to hand you each one of these. List your team members in alphabetical order. I will then use this to establish groups in Dropbox. Now you will, after this is over today, if you decide you hate your group, that you can't work with them, I'll let you switch groups. But we're going to start establishing groups in Dropbox so that you can turn in assignments for your group projects in here fairly quickly. So I'll give this, and on each paper there will be a number, and that's how we will go in order of today's presentations. All right? All right, so what we're going to do is, as your group number is in order, we're going to go in group number order, so we'll start with number one. Hand me your project sheets as you come up. Have your group leader start by introducing himself, and each member of the team will introduce themselves. And have your leader give your pitch as to why you should be allowed to stay on the island. And then your answer to the plangent marketing question at the bottom. And then we'll either have a round of applause or you'll throw things at the stage. And we'll evaluate the responses of the class based on that. So group number one. Let me make sure the recorder is on. Yes. Recording.
And we get down to business and we have a lot of matters. Which was a good strategy.
So we introduce ourselves first?
Yep. Starting with your leader, your fearless leader.
I'm the fearless leader. I'm actually really scared. But my name's Brian. David Larson. Ben Todd.
Lydia Boy. Olivia Barron. Aubrey Weiser. Dennis Wood. Julie Antoine.
Okay.
Okay.
And how did you develop your team name?
Our team name is with the skills that everyone has. I feel like we are really diverse. We're very rare in the skills that we overlap. And the group brand name that we came with is Creative Innovators. That's dealing with the 5 minutes we got. And do I go over the marketing answer?
Yep, the answer.
Okay. Our answer for why we think marketing is important to society is, in my best words, I think marketing is an expression to defining yourself as to who you are as a company, which is vital to separating yourself from your competitors.
All right. What do you guys think? All right, team one, you're safe to stay. Thank you. Yeah. I'll go back. Number 2. Woo! Yeah. All right, number 2. Who is your benevolent dictator?
Good morning. My name is Jose with an H, but you can call me Christopher because that's my government name. Actually, I just want to say we came up with all our different strengths. We do overlap in a lot of them, but we do also have different a diverse of what people like, interests, and stuff like that. The best thing we could come up with is a lot, but we actually had one that stuck out. It's called L5. L5. It's involved with construction. It's the top thing. We are a group of 11 with different skills, strengths, weaknesses. We are human. We make mistakes, but what we do all have in common is success. We all want to be the working team to construct your market, what you want to sell, who you want to sell to, and make your company the best, or if not, the only thing people want to buy. Like I said, I'm Chris DeGoro, and thank you.
I'm Dakota. I'm Hunter Walter.
I'm Brady.
I'm Paul Williams.
I'm Derek Harris.
Hayden Bailey. Jackie Dean. I'm Ann. I'm Ryan McKinney. Alex Phillips.
All right. And what's your answer to the plangent question?
The answer to our plangent question is marketing is the foundation of the economy because everything you use, you consume, you buy, or even if you promote, comes from some source of marketing.
Okay,
And we are L5. Thank you again.
good answer. What do you guys think? Nothing was thrown at you. Number 3.
Oh, God.
All right, I am Jack Wodarski, the fearless leader.
John Delaney. I'm Keaton Squires. I'm Isaac Porter. I'm Michael Matheson.
Alrighty, and the brand name we gave ourselves was the logical team player because something that we all overlapped in is we all like critical thinking and working as part of a team, which came from all having real world experience and jobs and going to school. And as far as your marketing question goes, marketing is important to society because it drives capitalism and advancement as well as competition, which is a value.
Okay, good answer. What do you guys think?
All right, good evening, everybody. I'm Cody Rapp, and our team name is the Serious 7.
I'm Michelle Dodd.
Jacob Hayes,
Deja Carter.
Marshall Folsom.
Andy Reedy. So the reason we call ourselves the Serious 7 is because we work well under pressure, and we're all about business. We have a lot of different strengths in our group, but the main strength was working well under pressure. We get the work done in a timely manner and we get it done efficiently. So for the why marketing is important to society, we put marketing diversifies different products and allows producers to competitively brand themselves. So without marketing, everything would just be plain. We wouldn't necessarily, have different brands. We wouldn't have people establish themselves on different levels. So without marketing, our society wouldn't really have any diversity.
Okay, very good. Good answer. Wait.
Oh.
Good. What do you guys think? I think that was the loudest clap so far. Number 5. Oh, can I have your?
Sorry.
Thank you.
All right, so I'm the group leader, and our group is stellar because stellar means for outstanding, and we're all outstanding when it comes to our creative skills and just being like people with other people. Like that was a lot of people, but like getting along with everybody. And so my name is Catherine.
My name's Louis Steins.
I'm Delilah Living Hunter. I'm Kylie Wiggins. I'm Ashlyn Priest.
Mason Williams.
Kyle Benham.
And we said that marketing is important to society because it really sells innovation and the culture within the company and just really promotes the company's identity.
Okay. What do you guys think? Okay, can I have your paper? Thank you very much.
So I'm Ty Golay. I'm the fearless leader.
I'm Mary Reed. I'm Zoe Howard. I'm Alan Gregor.
Kemper Hearn.
Carson Green, Weston Hill.
And we chose, because of our strengths, the easygoers as our brand name because we all can get along with anybody and start talking to anybody and it's not awkward or we don't get nervous about it. But our answer was marketing is the key to a successful business or product. Without marketing, you wouldn't be able to get your product out and let people see your image otherwise. The reason why we would be great on the island and to be able to stay on the island is that we can do any task that you guys would like us to do. We can talk to you guys, be friendly. We don't get nervous. We don't really object very much. So that would be why we should survive.
Okay, what do you guys think? More rounds of us response. All right, very good. Number 7.
Go ahead, young man.
Hello, everyone. I am Megan Dworsheim.
I'm Eileen Anderson.
Amber Griffin.
Allison Muller.
Blake Shockley.
And based on all of our characteristics, we chose charisma as our group name because we all had a lot of communication, interpersonal skills, and just stuff like that. And based on answering the question, marketing is the foundation of today's world. The push for sales based on needs is what aids society in creating new technologies, developing new pharmaceuticals, and advancing the global economy.
Oh, very substantive. I like that. What do you all think? Thank you very much. Number 8.
Hi, everyone. My name is Haley Ward. I'm Bonnie Greenberg.
David Beecham. Austin Jorgen.
Kennedy Moore. I'm Joe Shelby. Our team name is Unified because all of us have different qualities, but we're all a group who know to be together. We complement each other. And we stay on the island of a coat because we each do have those different qualities. So like I'm really good at communicating, maybe someone else isn't, but I can kind of come back and compliment that, so on and so forth. And then our sentence is, marketing is a timeless tool used to inform and persuade consumers of products or services offered.
Okay, very good. What do you guys think? Wow. Well, I will tell you, as the ultimate benevolent dictator, you guys are safe. Number 9.
Hi, I'm Lindsay Gregory. I'm the group leader.
I'm Ashley Celine.
I'm Monique King.
Dustin Ford.
Sion Heron.
Abraham.
Nathan Bell.
Dane Williams.
Our group name is Plastic because our group of multi-talented individuals can be whatever you need us to be to best fit the task at hand. And we are not afraid to change and be flexible and use our many strengths to get the job done. We are Plastic. And marketing is important to society because it's wrapped up in many aspects of life, from companies trying to draw in new consumers to people marketing themselves to get people to like them, I guess. And that's it.
All right, I'll tell you, your response was that you acknowledge something that's really important, and that is that people they market themselves, and that is a really important thing to recognize. So that's probably going to be about this point for this critical thinking challenge. What does the rest of you guys think? I got to tell you guys are harsh. I've never had a group booed before. This is a tough crowd. I'm nervous. You're making me sweat up here. Number 10.
Alright guys, what's going on? I'm the creative leader of our group, Jalen Bennett.
Corey Hunt.
I'm Shania Slavic. Sophia Lara.
Austin Elliott. Adam Stisson. Brandon Mobley.
And our group name is Miracle Productions, and the reason we chose that is because with our set of strengths, we feel like our group is good with fulfilling whatever a business needs. So mainly what our group has are problem solvers, coordinators, and people who are good at communication. So, you know, in a business, there's not always the highs, sometimes there's lows. So when there's those lows, we make miracles for it. And for that, in discussing why marketing is important to society, is because as society evolves, marketing is an essential instrument to protect yourself, your product, or your business.
All right, very good. What do you guys think? All right, do you have the paper? Loudest.
Sorry about
Thank you very much. Well, as I said, I'm intimidated now. I've never, in all the years I've done this exercise, had you all do that reaction. So anyway, when you write your student evaluations of me for that group, remember it was them. Good marketing, right? I'm marketing myself. I'm going to give you an opportunity now to answer an individual question. The first person who comes up with a plainchant answer to this question will get 10 bonus points added to their first exam. Here's the question. The first one to raise their hand and jump up, and I'll have you come up after class and make sure that I put it in D2L on your first exam. I've argued this morning, in having you stand up and do these exercises and look at this thing, that technology and jobs and the world we live in is changing radically. It's changed radically in the last 10 years. It will change radically in the next 10 years. Having said that, is a history of marketing important or not? First person to give me a plaintiff response is all you're going to first.
Yes, the history of marketing is important because in order to know where you will go, you have to know where you've been. And following the trends, I think the future in the future, same as it was in the past.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. You have 10 points. Anybody want to take an opposite answer and argue that it's not? Go ahead.
I would say marketing is probably going to be important because, like they say, what they grew up back in what we're growing up now and what we're going to grow up in the near future is if they already made that, could you imagine what they're going to make in the near future that's going to be better than that or could be better than what we do?
So you don't think a history is at all important?
It really is. So basically, it's even in the history of technology too.
Okay, so you think it is important to understand. He said it was important. Anybody want to take the opposite tack, that it's not important?
I think when you're going to deal with new situations, because obviously in the future it's going to be innovative. You're going to be marketing different things. So how I feel is if you have the essentials of marketing and being able to sell a product or whatever you want to sell, then as long as you have that skill, whatever happens in the future, whatever happens, it doesn't matter as long as you sell it without.
Okay, so you think it's sort of inborn, innate, and that you don't necessarily need to understand the history if you have the skills that are vital and those skills change?
Yes.
Okay, interesting response. Anybody else want to take a stab at it? Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so earlier you said that studies showed that like our generation was like the laziest. So I feel like you wouldn't need to look back at history to know that things in the past like aren't going to matter. If our generation's changing and evolving so much, it's so obvious that like things that were in the past don't matter anymore.
They don't matter. I mean, there are things that I know about from my past, and I'm a Gen Xer, and I was the first generation of people to be called lazy, the first generation to be called the me generation. And your generation, Generation Y, is the me generation on steroids. We now have Generation Z, as some people are calling it, starting college this year. And so we'll see if they're even more lazy. I don't know that that's necessarily a bad thing, by the way. I think it's more important to work smart rather than work hard. That's what's important in this day and age. So I think that may be one of the things that has radically changed about our world, is that it's no longer necessarily all that critical to work hard, and your generation doesn't want to necessarily work 40 hours a week at the same job sitting at a desk. You want difference. But having said that, I think that a history of marketing is important. For those of you that answer questions individually, come up and see me after class. I'll make sure I get you those bonus points. I'm going to point out something on the D2L page. First of all, there's a syllabus if you go to the content tab for this class. You can see that there. And then under the modules tabs, I've already posted PowerPoints and previous class lectures if you're interested in seeing previous class lectures. And if the video recording fails, I have a backup, which is those old class lectures are also posted to the D2L page. So I'm going to start talking today about the history of marketing. And we'll talk more about that tomorrow on Thursday and continue on with why it's important and how we're going to engage in value co-creation. So my name is Grant Gary. I'll be a professor for this semester here in marketing at UCO. Marketing as a human activity has ancient roots. We don't know when the first societies were formed. We have echoes of these societies being formed in various ancient texts throughout history that sort of tell us how societies were formed. But we don't know exactly when the first society was formed. But once we did, once we came out of what we might call the primitive psyche, and we began to form groups, we began to market. So as a human activity, marketing has very ancient origins. As an academic activity, though, marketing is a relatively new discipline. The study of marketing is a relatively new discipline. So what we see emerging with the first marketing departments being established is this development of a body of thought that is going to lead to where we are today, and so that's why I think it's important. So the first body of thought that emerged in the marketing idea, and the first marketing philosophy, is what we call the production philosophy. And this is for most of recorded history. We were a production era or production philosophy society. Now, why was that? Why were we a production philosophy society? And what does it mean that we were a production philosophy society? Well, it basically meant that if you produced something, you would probably find somebody to buy it. Why is that? Who wants to give me an answer? Think back. Why would somebody just buy anything that you produce? Why?
Could it also be in all those space of specialization? Like some individuals were good with feeding people in clothing while others went out hunting, so they just exchanged these original currency.
Yeah, absolutely. That's absolutely correct. When we came together as societies, we began to specialize. I'm good at making stuff. I'm good at making wool, for example, from my sheep. You're good at hunting rabbits. I'll trade you a rabbit for some wool, right? So if I have something, I probably can sell it. For most of human history, goods were pretty scarce. Survival was pretty fragile. It's hard to imagine a time I can control that camera with my phone. That's how I turn it on and off. Don't walk over there and turn it on and off. 10 years ago, would anybody thought about doing that? 100 years ago? No. So we don't think about it today, how we got to this point where we can control a camera from across the room with a cell phone. But for most of human history, we didn't have all this stuff. So if you made anything, people would probably accept it. This philosophy in this era, until about 1920, can be summed up by a line from a movie, and the movie is called Field of Dreams. Anybody can give me the takeaway line from Field of Dreams? Gets 10 points on the first exam. What's the takeaway?
If you build it, they will come.
If you build it, they will come. If you build it, they will come. If I make anything, you'll probably buy it. Why? Because it's better than not having something. The Model T. Henry Ford is the first mass producers of automobile in the world. He doesn't invent. A lot of people are mistaken. They think he invents the assembly line. He doesn't. The assembly line had already been invented. What did he do? He perfected the assembly line. How did he perfect the assembly line? How did the old assembly line work before Henry Ford was? Well, workers moved to the product. What did Ford add to the assembly line? The product moved to the workers as it went down the line. So it was the moving assembly line. The end result of that assembly line was what?
Mass production.
What? What was the model? Who said it? Model T. And you could have a Model T in any color you wanted so long as that color was black. That's right. You could have that so long as you wanted that color, that Model T in black. You could have that Model T in any color you wanted as long as your color was black. How many of you want a black car today? Why? You live in Oklahoma. Black's a horrible color for cars in Oklahoma. Isn't it? It's horrible. It's a horrible color for cars in Oklahoma. You have red dirt, which means that your car is constantly what? Constantly dirty, and it's in the summertime, it's hot. It's really, really hot. So for most of human history, if you built something, people would buy it. Now, this philosophy begins to be abandoned in the 1920s, and we see a new philosophy emerging. Now, although the philosophy is largely abandoned in the 1920s, there are still companies today that use this philosophy. Apple, under Steve Jobs, was an example of a company that utilized this philosophy. Steve Jobs' attitude was, we don't need to do marketing research because you don't know what's cool. I'm going to tell you what's cool, and you'll buy it. And we did. How many of you have an iPhone? The vast majority of you, your hands went up. The vast majority of you have an iPhone. That's because Steve Jobs told us what was cool. And once he told us it was cool, we've stuck with that platform because it's hard to switch. The switching costs are enormous, at least in terms of what we think the switching costs are going to be. But in the 1920s, we see a different era. Other people enter the market. It's not just Henry Ford now. We now have the Dodge brothers that come into the market, right? So it's no longer going to be good enough to just build a Model T and make it in black. You're going to have to build, and we're going to start to have more differentiation. You see mass production taking hold in the 1920s, the height and the revving up of the industrial era, and lots of goods are now produced. And so now what our philosophy turns to is not if you build it, they will come. It's going to have to be generating sales for our company. And so we get the sales era. Now this is a transactional selling era, a transactional selling philosophy. It's different than the sales philosophy we teach. We have one of only 100 dedicated sales programs in the nation here at UCO, and we have the only sales program in the state of Oklahoma. We have both a major and minor in sales. And it's amazing to me how many people say, I want to go into business because I want to make money, but I don't want to go into sales. I'm just not a salesman. And a lot of that attitude comes from this era and this attitude of the ADA model. Awareness, you should know this for a test. Awareness, interest, desire, action. I'm going to make you aware of my product. I'm going to give you a pitch, gain your interest, create a desire, and get your money. Transactional selling. The transactional sales era. When I say sales, what comes to mind? What? What comes to mind?
Walking door to door.
Walking door to door with vacuum cleaners, right? Kirby used to be sold that way. Rainbow. Anybody have a Rainbow vacuum cleaner? Anybody heard of a Rainbow vacuum cleaner? They were great vacuum cleaners. What made the Rainbow unique? Water. All the dirt went into the water, and then you could just pour the water out. You didn't have to deal with the bag. It was all caught in the water. They sold those door to door. Fuller brushes. The Fuller Brush Company is still in existence today. They started out in door-to-door sales. What else comes to mind? we're going to say insurance sales, okay?
Cars.
Cars, that's the big one, right? How many of you bought a car? Almost everybody, and that was a miserable experience, wasn't it? And it was a miserable experience because why? The salesperson. So this transactional era in sales really gives sales a bad name, but I will tell you that if you want to make $100,000 a year starting out, sales is the way to go. I have more companies that want our sales students than I have sales students to give them. We have 100, we're the only program on campus that can say we have 100% placement of our sales majors and minors. Nursing can say they have 100% placement of their majors, they don't have a minor. We're the only one on campus that can say we have 100% placement of both our majors and minors. So I really encourage you to think about a career in sales and to realize that what we're going to talk to you about and teach you in that sales program is not really the sales era. That's transactional sales. We still see transactional sales occurring all the time. Where do you see this? How many of you in the fall went to the Great State Fair of Oklahoma? A number of you. I love the fair. It's my favorite fall activity. Because it's amazing to me as a marketer to walk around and watch what people would rather have than their own money. That's absolutely incredible. And it's all this transactional sales. You see these guys with these headsets on, right? With a microphone. They think they're Celine Dion or Cher or something, right? They're making this pitch to try and sell you pans or knives or, you know, the latest mop or the Sham Wow. And they get you 20 bucks. And then what happens when the fair is over? Well, they move on. That's not what we're talking about when we talk about sales in the modern era and the type of sales that we teach. But from this era, we get a lot of negative attitudes towards business and towards marketing because it wasn't necessarily focused on the customer. It was just about, we got this mass-produced product, we got to move units. How do we do that? Send salespeople out there to try and move units and move on to the next transaction. That lasts until about the 1960s. In the 1960s, we get a different era. And so I want you to think about this question for next time. And we'll answer this in your groups. I'll give you time in class to do this. Is marketing an art or a science? And I'm going to ask you to justify your answers in your groups. And I'll create a Dropbox for your group to submit your examples to. Then I want you to think about, is everything an art or a science on a college campus? Or is there a third category? And finally, what is the difference between an art and a science? We'll talk about those responses in depth next time in your groups. So I'll give you about 20 minutes at the beginning of class to come up with your answers. You might at least want to have one person bring a laptop or something. You'll have until midnight on Thursdays to submit those to the Dropbox. So I'll give you time in class to do those, and we'll talk about those answers in class, and then we'll move on to the next era of marketing. I hope you've enjoyed the first class. It will be posted just as soon as I get a chance to on D2L, and I'll send you a note on that. And if you have any questions, let me know.